Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Nikki Devitt, and I'm President and CEO of the Petoskey Regional Chamber of Commerce. And if you're wondering, well, what am I joining you for today? Make sure you're in the right space because we absolutely want to make sure that that is what's going on right now. You're here for our Hot Topics Earned Sick Time Act. It's what small businesses need to know now. And that's because of the fact that the Michigan Earned Sick Time Act went into effect on February 21st. And while larger businesses have already adjusted because of the way the law works, many small employers, 10 or fewer employees, are still really truly catching up or maybe haven't even started yet. And you might have questions. And with that October 1st deadline right around the corner, this webinar is really just designed to give you the essentials you need to know. And as I said, this is part of our Hot Topics program here at the Petoskey Chamber. And for those who don't know, our Hot Topics is a free program that we use to open to the entire community, businesses as well, to really just have key conversations on issues that impact not just our businesses, but our employees as well. Sponsored by Comfort Keepers and also part of our Winfluence programming. So I want to make sure that I take just a moment to introduce Russ Knopp of Comfort Keepers as our sponsor and say thank you and see if there's anything you'd like to tell us all.
Well, thanks, Nikki. Yes, I'm Russ Knopp. I'm the co-owner of Comfort Keepers with my wife, Leslie, and we're just thrilled to support this effort of the Chamber. The Chamber has helped us through a lot of things in recent years. If you think back to COVID and how the Chamber helped us navigate that. And like Nikki just said, a lot of larger businesses have benefited from the Chamber as they navigated ESTA. And now today we've got two experts that are going to help businesses with 10 or less employees navigate this ESTA thing. So thanks, Nikki, for what you're doing. We appreciate it, and we're glad to help.
Well, thank you so much, Russ, and thank you again to Comfort Keepers for your sponsorship to make sure that we can get this very valuable and critical information out to our employers. So we're going to kick it right off. I want to introduce Elizabeth Williams, who is the principal human resource solution for Rehmann, as well as Bill Meengs, who is an attorney for Stroup Meengs. Elizabeth and Bill are going to walk us through really just some of the key topics that we have, some of the key questions as far as, how does the law apply, how accrual works, policy requirements, records you need to keep. And we're going to do this quite quickly. And I offer you to please drop your questions in the chat. And we will have time for chat at the end, but whatever we don't get to, know that you have the ability to follow up with either of our speakers. So I really encourage you to do that. So questions in the chat as we go along, if you have any. We're going to go rather quickly. This is a short webinar. The purpose is to give you a high-level overview of where you should be now as a business owner and what you should be looking to make sure you have in place by October 1st. We're also going to give you a tremendous amount of resources after the fact. I will drop in at the end our webpage that will have not just the slides, not just the recording, but also key links to some of the places that we're going to talk about for more information if you need it. So I am going to turn it over now to Elizabeth and Bill, and thank you both very much.
Thank you, Nikki. Appreciate it. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Elizabeth Williams with Rehmann, and I want to go over what our roadmap is for you for compliance regarding ESTA. As you all know, that October 1st date is right around the corner, and we want to make sure that you have all of the those roadmap details that you need to make sure that you're compliant with this law. What we're focusing on today is for those Michigan businesses that have 10 or fewer employees. So let's get started. Who must comply? Well, it's every employer in Michigan, but for small businesses that have 10 or fewer employees, you need to provide up to 40 hours of sick time. And to reference who this covers, it's your full-time employees, your part-time, even those that seasonally work for you, even your temporary employees. To explain temporary, if you only have them occasionally work for you or very part-time and they're on your payroll system, that's temporary. If they are contracted through a temp agency, that's the temp agency's responsibility to track their ESTA time and so forth. So just wanted to clarify that, because there's two ways you can classify a temporary employee. And this, as I said, applies to businesses with 10 I wanted to delineate here, so you're aware. Businesses that have 10 or more employees for 10 weeks or more, they lose that small business status. So you want to make sure you're watching your head count for that. So I wanted to point that out there, because some businesses do hover around that 10 employee mark, up or down 1 or 2 employees. And large businesses, just for reference, they're 10 or more employees or over 10 employees, and they need to provide up to 72 hours of ESTA. So I wanted to make that delineation. Now, perhaps you already give time off to some of your employees. You can dovetail your ESTA hours into that policy. Perhaps you don't give any time off to your part-time or seasonal employees. Well, these are the ones that you would then have to start accruing, and we'll talk about that accrual and a couple little other caveats of information that may help you. So there's 2 ways that you can account for this earned sick time, either accrual method or front loading. You have to decide what would work best for your organization, and also how it perhaps could dovetail into any existing time off policies that you currently offer. In some cases, some businesses offer enough PTO or vacation time that meet or exceeds this ESTA requirement. So it's a matter of how you craft your policy language, if you to make sure that you're not giving more time than you really can afford to, or that is already covered in your time off policy. So the rule of thumb, you accrue 1 hour for every 30 hours that that person works. However, if you front load it, you can just start the 40 hours at the beginning of the benefit year. You have choices, and you can tell that person, well, you can only use up to 40 hours per year. Now, what's a benefit year? You decide. It could be calendar, January through the end of December. It could be on their hire date, anniversary date of that hire date. You decide. Or if you start your PTO for your employees every June 1st. So benefit year, it doesn't define calendar year, you choose. So that way there's less disruption to whatever your current policy, time off policy is. For carryover rules, it is required for accrual. So say they don't use all their 40 hours and they earn the 40 hours, it is required. However, if you front load, that's one of the nice things about front loading, is that it's not required. So again, you have to choose what works best. And how I devise these policy updates is, what is the least amount of disruption to your current process that works the best business wise, as well as for the employees, what you need to offer them. Now, there's several different ways that people can use earned sick time under this law. 3 buckets: their own medical care, a family's medical care, or in the cases of domestic violence. So we break that out here of what all those can be. And basically, if you have PTO, and if the ESTA dovetails into that, they're basically using PTO if you give at least enough time, but for these particular reasons. And also, interestingly enough, certain meetings at your child's school could also count toward ESTA. So we describe that, what that can be here. It could be something even as working with your school to needing to take time to talk about their IEP plan or something like that. So keep that in mind. And also, if there's a public emergency, God forbid we have another huge public health scare, health emergency, like we did in the pandemic, or say there's something that goes rampant through the school system and the school has to close, they could also use an ESTA day for that, and so forth. So a little information about that. And Bill, I'd like to turn it over to you.
Yep, thank you, Elizabeth. I'm Bill Meengs. I'm the principal owner of Stroup Meengs Attorneys here in Petoskey. We're going to talk a little bit about record keeping and record retention. The Act does have a notice requirement, and what that means is that all employers must post a notice informing employees of their ESTA rights. Now, that one's pretty easy to comply with because Michigan's Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity, or LEO, has a downloadable poster on their website, and you just can print that off and stick it up on your employee bulletin board, and you're all set there. Another issue is that employers are also required to provide a written notice to all employees, either by the effective date of ESTA, so October 1 for small businesses, or to all new employees upon their hiring. So that's in addition to putting up the poster. Now, regarding record retention, employees are to retain records that document the hours worked and the earned sick time taken by each employee for not less than 3 years. The records are supposed to be available to the wage and hour division with appropriate notice and at a mutually agreeable time. It's also important to note that failure to provide records is a presumption of a violation. Your statute of limitations for employees to file a complaint is 3 years under the Act. So I'm recommending to my clients that they actually keep the records for 4 years, not 3, because it seems to me you could get in a situation where an employee files a complaint, real close to the end of that statute of limitations, and you may have destroyed the records. So I am actually recommending that we keep records for 4 years, simply because that statute of limitations is 3 years. Regarding employees who are rehired within 2 months, those employees will keep all of their previously accrued and unused sick time. So if somebody, either you let them go or they separate voluntarily, if they're rehired within 2 months, they keep any of their previously accrued and unused sick time. The only exception to that is if you as the employer paid out the value of that unused sick time upon their separation. So you've already paid that out, that employee doesn't keep it. So moving on to enforcement and penalties. An employer who fails to provide earned sick time is subject to a $1,000 administrative fine per violation and potentially an additional civil fine of up to 8 times the employee's normal wage. And affected employees also have civil remedies, so they can file a lawsuit within 3 years of the alleged violation. Those suits can be for failure to provide sick time or for employer retaliation. So an employer who willingly violates the notice requirement, so if you don't have the poster or you willingly don't provide written notice to your employee, you're subject to a $100 fine for each violation of that. Regarding retaliation, there can be no discipline or discharge for using sick time. However, the amended Act does allow for an employer to take adverse personnel action against an employee if they use sick time for unauthorized purposes. So Elizabeth went through what all of the allowed purposes are. If an employee uses sick time for something other than those, you are allowed to take adverse action against that employee. I would make sure that you've got very good documentation if you decide to follow that. So there's also the ability for an employee to file a complaint with LEO. And these administrative complaints will largely lead to investigations, potential corrective actions, and some public reporting from the agency as well. Moving down to collective bargaining agreements and contract employees. So if you have a unionized workforce and they're subject to a collective bargaining agreement, and that collective bargaining agreement actually expressly includes sick time benefits, the provisions of that CBA will prevail over what ESTA says for the duration of that collective bargaining agreement. Now, there can't be an extension of that. So whatever the CBA's stated expiration date is, that's when the CBA will expire for purposes of sick time. After that date, ESTA applies, okay? Any future CBAs, any agreements entered into after that would have to meet or exceed the sick time requirements under ESTA. If a union contract, a CBA is in place right now, but it doesn't address sick time, then ESTA would apply to that agreement right now. Maybe you have employees that are working under an employment contract. If that contract was signed before December 31 of 2024, excluding a signed employer policy, so that's not counted as an employment contract, the act is going to apply starting on the contract's stated expiration date. So again, if your employment contract goes for a specific period of time and it addresses sick time, that contract will actually prevail at this point over the terms of ESTA. But once you reach that stated expiration date on the contract, even if you enter into an extension, that stated expiration date is the end of the sick time for that contract, and ESTA's provisions would apply at that time. So you can't extend the contract. And once you reach that stated expiration date, then ESTA applies. So penalties, well, we went over that already. So where to get help? You know, I find that the Leo website is a really good resource. There is a frequently asked questions section on there that really has good info and answers a number of questions. So, and then Elizabeth, I'll toss it back to you as far as what should we be doing now?
Sure. So here is your call to action. Make sure that you're creating a new sick leave policy before October 1, because you have to have it in your employees' hands by October 1st and post the poster that you can pull off of the Leo website as well. As part of your policy creation, you need to decide if you're going to accrue or front load to add that language to it. And from there, update your payroll and or HR systems, whichever you use. The payroll systems already can accommodate this. Obviously, they've already put it into place since February earlier this year. So you just need to make sure that you have the proper codes set up. And post that ESTA notice before on October 1st. Make sure that your staff is aware of it. Your managers communicate these changes to all employees, because as you know, when employees call in sick, who do they call? If they're not calling you directly as a business owner, they're calling their manager. So you want to make sure that your managers know how to follow the policy. And again, maintain compliant documentation. As Bill had mentioned, we have some resources here for you. So when you get this this presentation, you can just click on those links. It'll take you exactly where you need to go to find those resources.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Bill, very much. Looking to the chat, we do have a question for you. If an employer gives employees paid leave for certain holidays, do those hours count towards ESTA hours?
Bill, did you want to take this?
So if we're giving them for a paid holiday, I don't believe that those are going to apply to your ESTA hours. So that's not, you're still going to have to provide as a small business your 40 hours of earned sick time. Paid holiday is a completely different category and section.
I think that leads into a question that I know there was a lot of discussion before we got to the February 21st. A lot of back and forth as to how this law was going to end up and what was the most fair opportunity for both businesses and employees. And I know that that question kind of leads into one that I don't know if it's still out there for folks. But for those that, even small business employers that have a PTO bank that exceeds the ESTA amount, what kind of record keeping is, how does that work best? And how do they go about making sure, Elizabeth, I know with the action plan, how do you address that? If you already have a substantial PTO bank rather than separate sick time, separate vacation time, what does that look like for a small business employer?
I think you would still code it as PTO because it's the one bank and it exceeds ESTA. However, you still need to have the ESTA policy in your handbook referenced. And how I write it is I specifically call out that this is in the state of Michigan, how much ESTA time and how it works. However, our PTO policy meet or exceeds ESTA. But where it can get a little bit more nuanced is you can deny PTO, right? You can deny someone's request. However, if they come to you and say, you know, I want to use it under ESTA, you have to follow those ESTA guidelines, you know, and not ask for documentation. If they're missing one day, they have to miss, you know, the fourth day, you can request any doctor's note and so forth. So you have to follow the ESTA rules if they raise their hand and say it's ESTA related, right? I need to take this day, PTO day, or a few hours because I have to go to my child's school and all of the things that qualify under that. Many times when ESTA is invoked, it is last minute requests, right? And so a PTO request may get denied if they didn't follow the PTO guideline of giving advance notice. Some companies may ask for like a week in advance. So that's where the nuance is. You want to make sure that you are honoring the guidelines of ESTA, even though they're still taking it as a PTO day, and then keeping any of that documentation on file for reference.
Perfect. Thank you for that clarity, because I know that a lot of folks that feel that, you know, well, I'm covered for everything because I already offer so much, so it's fine. It is going to be definitely something they still have to watch out for. I want to make sure there are not any other questions in the chat, and also give both Elizabeth and Bill an opportunity. You've had a few weeks, months, actually, to kind of field back and forth. Elizabeth or Bill, is there anything that you've seen from larger employers as they're making the switch to an ESTA standard, and anything beyond what you just said that small businesses should be aware of as they're preparing?
Well, I think from my end, you know, the biggest thing that the questions that I get at are largely regarding the record retention. What do they need to keep? How long do they need to keep it? Again, I'm being a little cautious on it and recommending that they keep an additional year beyond the 3, you know, just to make sure that should an issue arrive, they do have all the records that are required here.
And I've seen a lot of employers call to ask for clarification or how to explain to their employees that they really need to understand the law and their policy and practice. Some employees truly believe that they're entitled to additional sick time. You really want to be clear with them that our PTO policy, our vacation policy, meet or exceeds it. So you're not going to get an additional 40 hours of time off. That's where they're not quite seeing the nuances. They hear about ESTA and they get excited that they might get an extra week time off. So you really have to communicate and make sure they understand, sign off on the policy, because those are the ones who can be a little disruptive in your workplace, right? And also you might see those who might try to abuse ESTA to get that extra time off. So just be wary of that. There's an occasional flutter of behavioral issues through abuse that may happen from time to time. This is a new benefit that those who wish to try to take advantage of benefits to the full extent, this is one mechanism that they may try. So you just have to be really diligent and make sure that you are properly assessing the use, but also honoring the employee's rights for those who may be legitimate and those who may be trying to gain something for their own benefit.
Absolutely. All right, let's look at a couple more questions in the chat. Can small employers change their policy and remove vacation pay since they are now required to offer ESTA? If they previously offered 40 hours vacation and now 40 hours of ESTA, that's a lot for a small employer.
I would say you would dovetail it. If you already offer that, you are in essence already in compliance with ESTA. You just need to notate that accordingly in your policy. I would caution against pulling away completely. Take a really thoughtful look at your time off policy structure, because it could create other ripple effects that are adverse to your company culture. So again, to clarify, the ESTA is not meant to give an extra 40 hours. If you give at least 40 hours now, you can dovetail it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would just, as Elizabeth said, I would dovetail that in. You're already given the 40 hours. Maybe just adjust the personnel handbook so that those 40 hours also comply with the terms of ESTA and what the requirements there are. But I don't think you need to give an additional 40 hours.
Next question. Good morning. If our current policy allows sick time on a scale according to years of service, and we just front load the 40 hours for all employees, do we meet the requirements?
So we're front loading 40 hours for all employees. Yeah, I think that would comply with the terms of ESTA.
Elizabeth, anything on that one?
As long as you give the required amount under ESTA, you can augment your policy to be richer than that if you wished. So if you have it also based on seniority and those with more years get extra sick time, you could do that as long as you're complying with the minimum requirements of ESTA.
Perfect. Thank you. Do we start payout on ESTA this year or on October 1st and then going forward?
Well, so the act is going to apply on October 1st. So if you're doing accrual, that's when the accruals are going to, basically start. And then it depends on what you've elected for your benefit year. So, are you a calendar year or is your benefit year a different period? But you're going to be covered by the act on October 1st. So your accruals would start at that point.
I'm going to assume too, if you're an employer, that you're in the middle of the year, and you can help me kind of clarify this for everyone too. So you're starting on October 1st and your calendar year begins in January. And if you're doing front loading, you technically, how are they recommending you handle that, next 90 days, if you will? Are you in compliance simply by having it in your handbook and saying, okay, on January 1st, we're going to front load those 40 hours, or are you dividing out what the 40 hours would be based on what's left in the 90 days?
I would say if you want to keep it on a calendar basis, you would accrue for the last quarter, October 1st through December 31st. Depending on how you write your policy, that would or would not require the carryover. Like if you front load, I would say I would base it on the last quarter, and then come January 1st, it's a new benefit year, and that's where you could continue the front loading for the full year from there. Bill, did you have any other thoughts?
No, I would agree with that. I think if you're front loading, you just kind of prorate that for the October, November, December, and then you do your full 40 hours or whatever it is you're going to front load as of January 1 if you're on a calendar year. That's how I would recommend my clients handle that.
And then we have a question, how is it going to be determined if we are not in compliance? Is there a report required to submit to the state?
So there's not a report required. This is largely an employee-driven issue. If the employee files a complaint against you with Leo, they will start an investigation. Of course, it's not only just the employee filing a complaint with Leo, they have the ability to file a civil action as well on their own. So it's not so much that we're filing a report to show that we're in compliance. It's that you never know what an employee is going to file as far as a complaint goes. So you're going to want to make sure you have your ducks in a row there, because it can get very expensive if you do have a complaint filed against you and you're found to be in violation. So um, it's very much an employee-driven enforcement kind of at this point.
Thank you. Is there a place to go and copy and paste the verbiage of this policy into ours? I'm on the site now and I'm not locating anything like this. I'm gonna drop in. And I do not know if this is a paid link, but I'm gonna drop it in anyway. And this will also be on our website. So the Michigan Chamber has some great resources that they've utilized, including a sample ESTA employee notification letter. It's in fact what we used. As well as a sample ESTA employee handbook policy to kind of help you gauge that. So there are a lot of resources to dig through between the Leo's website, SBAM's website, and the Michigan Chamber's website. So we kind of will have that all built out for you on our webpage to make it just a little bit easier to track it all. Because some resources are better than others, but either way, you also want to look for what is available to you. And Leo's website is the one where anything is going to be available to you at no charge, whereas you might find charges depending on what your involvement is with SBAM or the Michigan Chamber. So, and you can always reach out to us here at the Chamber if you need some assistance navigating some of those paywalls, because we can not necessarily share all the information, but we can talk you through some of the things that we have that's got a paywall to it. So happy to help in any way we can. Do we have any more questions before we wrap up? Give everybody just a couple seconds here. And I just want to say thank you very much. Gosh, we got you out of here like 8 minutes early. I want to say thank you so much to Elizabeth and Bill for taking the time today. I think that's just one of the most important things about Northern Michigan communities is we're very good at taking care of each other. Thank you for everyone coming on this webinar today. There is a lot to get through and understand with this. And it has been for a long time. And I feel almost as though small businesses, we did get a little grace, if you will, by not starting till October 1st, but we know in Northern Michigan, our busiest season is just wrapping up. So it's not like you took a lot of time in the middle of June and July to get this done. So you can still get this done. And that's what we want you to do. We want to make sure that you are in compliance. We want to make sure that you're comfortable and your employees are comfortable as well. So in probably just a few short, well, maybe an hour, hour and a half, on that page that I just dropped in, I will make sure that not only if you go there right now, all the links to everything we've referenced is there right now. The slides from today are there. And then hopefully in about an hour or so, the video will be there as well of today's webinar. So that helps you totally kind of dig through. And then you're going to have the contact information of Elizabeth and Bill. And I encourage you highly, if you do not have someone that you are leaning on for this, this is something you want to have help with. And make sure that you are doing it the way that is going to be best for compliance for everyone. So looks like we got one more little comment. Can we just go back real quick to prorating for October 1st if front loading? Or would that be okay? Or can we just do accrual from 10/1 and then switch to front loading?
Yeah, I think you can either prorate your front loading from October 1 going forward. You know, or you could do accrual this first year and switch to front loading for the next year. It's not a situation that if you decide to accrue that you're locked into that. I mean, you can still switch to front loading as long as your front loading policy complies with the act. So if you wanted to accrue for the next 3 months and then switch to front loading, I think you'd be fine.
All right. Well, thank you everyone so much. I also want to say a special thank you to Russ Knopf of Comfort Keepers for sponsoring our Hot Topics programs. We have several Hot Topics throughout the year here at the Petoskey Chamber on a variety of issues. And 2026 obviously is going to be a hot one with that as far as our community conversations. So we encourage you to stick around and stay tuned. And thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Elizabeth. And thank you, Russ, and thank you, everyone else. And I hope you all have a fantastic weekend. We'll get this up and on the website for you. Further questions, please reach out to the experts. That's the best way to handle it.